President Cyril Ramaphosa has agreed to the appointment of a commission of inquiry into the alleged improprieties at the Public Investment Corporation. The inquiry will look into the PIC's governance and operating model and investment decision-making framework. The PIC has recently faced questions over its management of a 25% stake in VBS Mutual Bank. The corporation oversees the investment interests on behalf of large government employee pension fund, including the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Its CEO, Dan Machila, has faced a raft of misconduct allegations. Machila also has been accused of authorizing the release of funds without the PIC board's approval. Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene said information on the chairperson, support team, and detailed terms of reference will be communicated in due course. Last month, the High Court in Pretoria barred UDM leader Bantu Holomisa from making further PIC corruption allegations. Mr. Holomisa joins us now on the line. Welcome, Mr. Holomisa, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
You've been fighting hard on this issue, and it appears your wish has been granted. We now have a commission of inquiry in the offing.
Yes, we welcome the announcement by the presidency that the president has acceded to our call. This would definitely help the people in the PIC as well as the pensioners to know exactly what is taking place there, because a lot of nauseating reports have been appearing in the newspapers for the last 12 to 18 months. So at last, somebody is going to investigate the matter. Yes.
And are you happy with the at least preliminary terms of the inquiry?
Yes, I'm happy because for now we're waiting for the terms of reference. However, I have a query where Mr. Nene has instructed the PIC board and the management to appoint a forensic audit firm to investigate the PIC management and possibly the board. I think the president should give those powers to the would-be commission of inquiry to appoint a forensic audit firm. We cannot allow a situation where the suspects are given an opportunity to appoint a person who are going to investigate them. It's unheard of.
We're also joined on the line now by Soli Moeng, a reputation consultant. So Soli, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and to your audience.
Well, what do you make of the announcement on the inquiry? Obviously, there's been a lot of noise around the PIC, a lot of it quite unsavory.
Well, look, it's something is being done, but we're tired of inquiries. I think that the government needs to show serious, if there is any compelling evidence or suspicion that criminal activity has taken place, we don't need an inquiry. We need a criminal investigation. That's what needs to happen. We need criminal investigation, not just at the PIC, at a number of other places as well, because these inquiries, whether it's the commission of inquiry, they take. And by the time they come out, people have forgotten, or the president decides not to implement whatever recommendations come out of them. We need criminal investigations that will lead to prosecutions if evidence is found that something wrong has been done.
Well, Soli, to you again. There's been a range of issues around the PIC, from VBS to some investments that they made, for instance, IE technologies that are considered contentious. But the PIC itself manages, 2 trillion rands odd of funds, the bulk of which, circa 90% of it, being GEPF funds, government employee pension funds. And then probably the second largest component is the Unemployment Insurance Fund, and then the Compensation Fund and some smaller ones. Now, when you look at what has been going on the PIC and all of these allegations and the news flow, why has the GEPF been so silent around all of this?
Look, the PIC has been controlled by politicians. That is why Zuma fought so long, so hard to get his own people to be involved with the management to chair PIC. And there are many stories that have been running that money has been taken to fund also politically connected individuals and entities, and I believe that has happened. I know they have, but obviously the investigations have to happen. Documentation has to be traced and that sort of thing, so that the truth is unearthed. I think it's been a treasure house for wrong people who are mostly politically connected, and it's also contributed to the overall reputational damage of South Africa, of how we manage resources, public resources. And it is important that independent, politically unaffected, uninfluenced investigations are take place, not ones that are driven by that will appear to be scripted, so that they go in one direction and not other directions.
Bantu, back to you on this. Soli just mentioned that we have a lot of commissions of inquiry that have happened in South Africa over however many years. I mean, 10 plus years, we've had lots and lots and lots of these. Do you think these commissions of inquiry are effective, or should we be pushing forward to criminal investigations after forensic investigations?
I agree with him partly, but we must blame the system. We are beginning to lose confidence in our criminal justice system, where people do as they like and there are no consequences. But at least this time around, we have seen people misusing this money, like you cited CBS. Cases like those, they don't even need an inquiry. You simply send hawks, and then if you have an effective prosecuting authority, they should then, those people, be prosecuted. The fact that the president has acceded to the call for an inquiry, definitely, he must have convinced himself that there is indeed a prima facie evidence. But in the case of PIC, we need an inquiry, because if you look at the 8.1 billion rand which was invested or is invested in the Pan-African Infrastructure Development Fund, we want to know, where are these billions invested in the continent? Who is in charge of those assets? You need an inquiry. I hope there will be an inspection in local. The other thing which the government needs to do, they must make use of the financial intelligence services to do a paper trail quickly, because those guys, they know everybody's account in this country, and they can trace where this money is.
But the next question that arises in all of this is that, I mean, quite clearly, if there has been improprieties at the PIC and there have been some improper conduct, quite clearly there would have been some very well connected, high-profile people involved in this. Solely turning to you, this won't be a very easy matter to get to the bottom of as a result, surely. Solly?
I know. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I think wrongdoing of any kind at the PIC did not start yesterday. It didn't start when Zuma was president. I think that, if there's an inquiry, I would be interested to know when this inquiry is meant to, back to when, or to how far backdated it's going to be. Because the fact is, we know, some of us have known for years that politically connected people have had easier access to money managed by the PIC than other people. I mean, some of these stories might be anecdotal, but the fact is it's been going on for many years. So we need to know who has benefited, who wasn't supposed to benefit, what has that money been returned, what has been the benefit to the state, to the PIC, to the people who took the money. We need to know all of that. So it's fine to say let's investigate what's been going on. I started hearing stories about money from the PIC when Mbeki was president, even before Zuma became president. Of course, I don't have evidence, but the point is there's a lot of anecdotal stuff going around out there. That people who are close to power have always had it easy with money from the PIC. So that's why I insist that an inquiry has to be very, very clear, but it also has to be limited in time. And if it's going to take forever, I'd rather they go into where there's sufficient prima facie evidence that something indeed went wrong that wasn't supposed to happen. They should include the crime investigation.
But Bantu, I mean, based on what Soli just said, I mean, there is a danger that if this thing, if it's too broad and it stretches, over too long a period, that the inquiry itself could take quite a long time, and ultimately, you know how it is with these things. If after it's run for too long, we all lose focus and we start to forget about it. There's always that danger, surely.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but it will depend on the terms of reference, really. But the main one I have for the PIC's future, as long as the PIC is chaired by a politician coming from or any ruling party for that matter, I think we need to review that. PIC must run on business lines. Look at the former chairperson of PIC, was the Deputy Minister of Finance, Jabu Moleketi. He has been there from time immemorial with the PIC transactions. And when they started Harris, for instance, it was seeded 100% by PIC. But today, we are told that PIC has got 30% there. The 70%, we are not told who owns it. But we see papers which reflect that Moleketi, Jabu Moleketi, as well as the Tepo of Harris, are also part of that 70%. The whole thing needs to be unpacked. But as I say, as long as it is headed by a politician, obviously he will be summoned to Lutuli House to say, please help so-and-so. It's like a javelin. Maybe some money ended up helping some political parties.
Soli, part of the announcement from Treasury included the fact that they were going to look at the governance structures of the PIC, and what Bantu just mentioned now goes some ways towards addressing some of the concerns around governance, including the fact that the Deputy Minister of Finance is automatically the chairperson of the PIC. But obviously there are other issues around governance. There were questions around how some of the investments were made and how much latitude the CEO had in either approving or whatever role he had in ultimately pushing through those transactions. Would you say that's a valid concern?
Yes, it is. I totally agree with the need to look at governance issues. We know, for instance, there used to be, structurally speaking, there used to be a position, an independent position, independent from the CEO's office, a position of the Chief Investment Officer. The current CEO decided to collapse that position into his position, so he became CEO and the Chief Chief Investment Officer, which meant that he could make decisions without somebody looking over his shoulder to say, well, you can't do that, you can do that. He basically took too much power into his office. That's wrong. I think there's got to be checks and balances even within the PIC, so that when a project is brought to the table for investment, you shouldn't take one or two or three people to get to the final decision to put a lot of money into it. That has to be changed back to the previous or even a stronger arrangement. And I totally agree with Mr. Holomisa that politicians should not be the ones who chair the PIC. Politicians have been chairing the PIC from the dawn of our democracy. That's why I was concerned earlier, and I remain concerned about how far the inquiry would go. Because as long as politicians have been at the top of the PIC, I can tell you for sure that friends and colleagues and entities that are close to political power have benefited unfairly in this thing.
Bantu, you know, one of the things that occurs to me in this is you look at some of the investments that have been made, and I think of two in particular, which I think you've mentioned in some of the, among some of the concerns that you've raised before, one being the investment into IO technologies and the other into Africa oil. Now, here we're talking about equity investments that ultimately ended up in listed entities, and I presume there are others that are in unlisted entities. Now, if at the end of this inquiry it is found that, say, whatever amount of money was invested in a vehicle of that sort and it wasn't properly done, it could be a very, very difficult thing to figure out what to do in that context, because you've got a business now that's running that depends on that capital going forward. What will be the consequence? Because almost certainly you can't retrieve the money.
Well, of course, the first thing would be, we would expect that the commission would get a finding and then recommend that the money be paid back. Then they can get into an arrangement with the PIC and the National Treasury. But on the other hand, we have to emphasize when we investigate this and check whether the due diligence is done on these investments. Is it done properly? Or are they just throwing these 2 billion, 1.7 billion, this and that, without consulting the board as a way of using this money as a conduit to friends, political parties, like a javelin, you know that theory of javelin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they are found to be on the wrong side, they will have to pay back that money. There must be no compromise.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for that. I suspect this is going to be a long, drawn-out process, and it's going to be extremely complex. But we look forward to seeing how it all ends up. Thank you very much.